Good morning, everybody. We are at Makeup or Breakup session, who knows what, session 5,000.
Oh, geez, I don't even know what episode we're on. Yeah.
Well, I count the times, Lou, when we were on the air, when it was the talk show during the talk show lineup.
Yes, absolutely. That
And
all counts, sure.
it sort of progressed from there. It's been several years now. So,
Yeah, so somewhere around 50 episodes a year or something like that. So we're a few hundred in actually at this point.
right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, how are you doing today? How's the weather down there since I'm in Maine?
Got a lot of rain last night. We're getting what you got probably early this morning, and
Ugh, yeah.
a lot of rain. It's starting to break up a little bit. It's cool, but
Mm-hmm.
hopefully we're past it. And a little breezy. You're getting the wind up there now, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. I know it's crazy weather, that's for sure. And now it's like so chilly out there. I think it's still in the 60s, but I don't care.
So as if this job isn't tough enough, now we're dealing with hurricanes and internet service
Right.
and stuff like that. So it's all
Right.
kinds of fun. Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, and if we go off the air, it's going to be because of me, because the internet, as you know, has been wonky up here.
That's why we're on a special time here this week, because we didn't have internet connection on a normal slot on Tuesday.
Right. Right. And when I was thinking about today and how we've had this long series of talking about singles and being single, and when we start to date, what we ask people once it starts to get serious. And I was remembering how great last week's session was. Didn't you love that?
The vacation, we talked about vacations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cruises more specifically.
Right. Right. Well, just because that's what he specializes in. And, it was so interesting to hear his view on cleanliness and safety protocols. Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, a hotel has, if they're lucky in this pandemic, if they're lucky, they have like 5 cleaners.
Yeah.
But the ships have hundreds of cleaners that are cleaning all day long, not just the one time before you go in your room.
Right. Well, think about it. I mean, who got hit the hardest by the pandemic? Whose business is crimped the most by the pandemic? It's the cruise lines. They had an awful start to this, and their business has been cramped throughout the pandemic. They've got to pay attention to this and listen. They did anyway. I don't know if you've been on a cruise, but
A long time ago.
Yeah, the staff is incredible, and there's always staff around. They're always taking care of things, and the ships are incredibly well maintained. So they're built for this. But they have to pay attention to this because they have to restore confidence in their customers at this point. So they're paying particular attention. Always a good time when everyone's on alert for all kinds of hygiene and safety reasons.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think they really sort of got a bad rap a while back when everybody got the flu?
Yeah.
Remember that? There was something that everybody got several years ago.
Oh yeah, they've had several ships that have had some flu breakouts that have been, or illness breakouts that have been kind of tough, and then of course the pandemic. I forget the name of the cruise ship, but there was one cruise ship that was kind of the poster child of the pandemic in the beginning there, and so yeah, and it's a right to be concerned. You couldn't have got me on a cruise ship at the beginning of the pandemic. I mean, that's just asking for trouble. But again, the pandemic's under control. They know how to deal with it now. And I was surprised. I wasn't surprised, except the number was even higher than I thought on how much staff per passenger ratio there was.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a lot of staff on these ships, and they're doing a good job keeping all the linens fresh, keeping the rooms clean. It's always been that way because cruises have always been first class, but now the emphasis is a little higher. So I think you can feel confident going out on a cruise now.
Yeah. And again, I think that they were always working on cleanliness. It's just that sometimes when you get, in the past when they had the flu, but I know several people who have gone on various cruises in the last several months. Some of the cruises were small, some of them were the bigger ones, and none of them got COVID.
Yeah.
And they were out eating, they were doing things. And I think what you're saying is right. Yeah. The other thing is, if you remember being on a cruise ship, a lot of the things are actually outside.
Yep.
So that kind of makes a difference too. And if you go on the excursions, which are like usually every 2 or 3 days, they're at an island or they're somewhere.
Right.
Then you're outside too. So you know.
I don't think I'd have a problem going on a cruise now. I mean,
Mhm.
these people are professionals, and it's always first class. It's always high end. Everything's always clean on the cruise ships I've been on, anyway.
Right, right. So I thought that was really cool. I thought that was, not to brag, but I thought that was a great idea to have him come on and talk about that kind of travel. And I was thinking how interesting it was that we were saying, hey, or he was saying, the guest was saying, when you're on a cruise ship, there are so many things that are activities that are for anyone. So, and a lot of times, a part of a couple doesn't want to go to the book group, or
Right.
part of the couple doesn't want to go to the art auction or the painting class or the yoga class. So, even when you're in those, even if someone is a couple, you're still going to be with people during those activities who aren't. It's not like you and like 8 couples taking yoga,
And
right?
this is probably kind of unfair, but while we're having the discussion, I'm thinking to myself, well, why wouldn't you just go on a singles cruise? There are singles cruises, which seem kind of depressing and 60ish to me, a singles cruise. I don't know. Not something I would probably get involved in. But talking about the regular cruises that have a lot of singles activities, which I think is a great idea. You can
Right,
go on and you can be, because I don't know, you're kind of on display if you're on a singles cruise. You're out there, everybody knows what's going on, and it's kind of
right,
a zoo situation. But you're on a regular cruise, you're just enjoying it, you're taking in some of the performances and all the activities and the great food that's available, and you can get together with other singles. And I love the fact that they had some singles on ships. They had some singles areas where the staterooms are close to each other, are connected, and they had a common area they can hang out. So you can be on a singles cruise but not be on a singles cruise.
right.
It's a
Well,
good
not
environment.
alone either,
Yeah.
That's the thing. Right,
Yeah, so you
right.
can find a group, you can hook up with a group online and, just kind of cruise with them, but not cruise with them. So you're
Right.
not just doing it by yourself.
Right. Yeah, I thought it was great. It really, he just really showed how you could go on a cruise ship of any size, and it's always a combination. I mean, even when you think about it, even like he was talking about, he's pretty much an expert on the Disney cruises, and even those, he and his wife go on, and they do separate excursions, and yeah, there's going to be a lot of kids on most of the Disney cruises, but not all of them. And there's so many people that there's this huge group that isn't part of a 4 or 5 person family.
Yeah,
So
and there are non-kid pools and non-kid areas, and of course the
right,
clubs and restaurants and stuff like that are gonna they're not gonna necessarily preclude kids, but some of the restaurants kids just aren't gonna go to. Parents going to want to go out for dinner. No,
right,
it's a great way to go about it. And as I said last week, I think it's the master's degree of what we talk about. You really shouldn't be dating if you can't go out to dinner alone, right?
right,
And
right.
if you can go on a cruise alone, you're ready to go. I think that takes a lot of you have to have come a long way working on yourself and have a pretty good life of your own and feel pretty good in your own skin and going out on the cruise. So it's something to aspire to.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the hardest thing is what you just said. When people are single, whether they're divorced or they're just single, they've never been married, whatever the situation is, um, it's really important to know that you're ready to date when you don't need a date. You're
Yeah,
ready to date when you don't need somebody else to do things with. You want it, but you don't need it.
right.
And
Yeah.
you're not sitting around at home going, oh, I have to read a book again. You're actually saying, hey, this is exciting. Tonight I'm going to read a book.
Yeah, and that whole message to yourself, if you can't go out to dinner alone or you're repulsed at the idea of going on a cruise alone, that whole idea means your mindset right now is I'm not complete as I am. I can't go without a partner. That's nuts. Going to dinner alone, that's crazy. And so that means you don't feel complete in yourself. And that's the goal. That's what you want to get to. Like, yeah,
Right.
sure, I can go out to dinner alone. Why not?
Yep. And I know I've mentioned this before, but that's one of the things that I'm educating my clients on before they're a client. So during the consults and even in the first meeting when they hire me, when I'm working with someone on date coaching, I explain what this looks like. And one of the key things is, as you know, because you've been there too, um, when you're in that phase of, I'm going to start dating again, you're not rushing out and filling your calendar
Right.
7 nights a week and 7 lunches a week.
Oh, God, no.
You're no, you're going to be more discerning. And after you are chatting with several people, to me, the more the merrier, because it's a numbers game.
Yeah, well, I said, oh God, no, because of me and my personal feelings towards dating, which
Yeah.
weren't always positive. It's a high stress situation for me. But listen, if you're in the
Oh, I see what
situation,
you're saying. Mhm.
yeah, if you're in the situation where you can put 2 or 3 lunch dates together in a week, go out and do it. Sure, why not?
Right.
If it's comfortable for you.
Yeah. And the thing is, but that comes as a result of taking the time to put together a good profile, put together good pictures. We could talk about pictures.
Yeah,
And
we gotta do a couple more sessions of those.
yep, we always have fun with that. That we
Yeah.
should do one next week.
Yeah.
We should do that. That would be hilarious. Get some pictures together and put them up on the
Go
screen.
online, look at some pictures, look at some guys' pictures, look at some girls' pictures and some profiles maybe.
Yeah. Yep. I saved a bunch, so I could get them to you ahead of time, maybe.
Yep.
But taking the time to do that, taking the time to just write for a little bit with people, and then taking the time to discern which several people or a couple of people do I want to actually invite for a phone call.
Yeah.
Right. And so the whole process is, for the most part, going to be, I don't want to say long drawn out, but it's going to be an endurance test.
It's going to be deliberate.
And it's deliberate.
Yeah.
Right. It's deliberate. It's planned. And you don't just say you're on match.com. You don't hop on there for 5 minutes today and not come back until October 12th.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because all these people will have written to you or liked your pictures or done something, and you're just sitting there now. Well, they don't know that they're the only ones. Well, they think they're the only one, but all these people who could have been potentials. I mean, it's just weird when somebody gets back to you 2 months later. You're like, what was that all about?
Yeah.
Did all the other ones fall through, and now you're going back through your Rolodex?
Yeah, exactly. That's the implication there.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to, you have to be brave with that. And again, it's typically an endurance test, and it's not something that, by next week, I'm sure I'm going to have some good dates. It's it doesn't really work that way.
Yeah.
Besides the fact that the other people probably aren't as available as you're trying to be available, because they know not to. Most of them aren't as desperate as you. So.
Well, it's not a matter of desperation, but it's different for guys too. Guys aren't going to get a lot of viable candidates the same way women do. Well, women get a lot of candidates. How many are viable are a whole nother story. But women get to pick and choose from a lot of contacts and things like that. Guys, the contact's not as strong and not as widespread as with women, generally speaking. Do you find that to be true?
Well, and yes, because I think part of the problem is women are reticent to be the ones to go out and,
Right.
like a couple of these pictures, like this guy's profile, and then write a bunch of little messages.
Oh, so you feel like the men have to be the proactive one and reach out?
I'm not saying they have to. I think in general, what I've seen, and not to be sexist, but women tend to be reticent with that, and men they go right at it. And that's why a lot of times men are just giving somebody a little heart or a like.
Yeah.
Just a little, hey, smiley face, because they're doing a numbers game. The problem is most women don't react well to that, because it's all you did was give me a thumbs up. You didn't write anything to me. But I think that men do that because it's to men, it's sort of it's a bit of a numbers game. And
well, part of it is that. Part of it, because I was guilty of that too at times. Part of that is you do want to gauge interest. You don't want to impose yourself on my personality. You don't want to impose yourself on somebody who wouldn't be interested in you at all. Or, again, because I'm just assuming women are getting a lot of response anyway.
Right. And it's hard.
But you're right. You just reach out with a note. That's not imposing, and that's not putting any undue pressure on them. But a note is a lot more effective than just a like or a little heart or something.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny because it was actually, it wasn't horrible by any means, but when I was dating someone, I don't know when it was, 25 years ago, and we went on a cruise together, that's where I really got to see his likes and dislikes, his mannerisms. Always had to be working out at the gym at 8 a.m. And I'm I'm on vacation. So I'm not being lazy in a negative way. I'm being lazy in a good way. I'm trying to enjoy this. I can wake up. We had a beautiful room with a balcony, and I'm looking out at the water. I'm not just going to run. Now the gym did look out at the water. That was really cool.
Well, was he on you for it, or was he just doing his
A
thing?
little bit, a little
Oh,
bit,
yeah. So you can't get on you for it. I mean, if he wants to get up and do his thing, that's fine. But you
right?
know, yeah,
Right. That's what I was thinking. But but I will say we did enjoy like the restaurants, all the options that we had, and the excursions were so much fun. One of the excursions was somewhere it was, I forget if we went to the what they call it. A lot of the cruise lines have like Eastern Caribbean and Western Caribbean. So I don't remember which one that was, but
yeah.
um, on one of them, we got off on an island. It could have been Grand Bahamas, and we took a we took a ride for like several hours actually on an America's Cup ship sailboat. Huge,
Wow.
it's really a yacht, right? But
Yeah.
these huge ships, these sailboats, and we sailed around the Caribbean for like 2.5 hours, and
Oh, that must have been a blast.
it was so much fun, Lou. And those boats, in case you've never, sailboats, they're so big. It was so impressive. It's like, when you go to like visit old Ironsides or something, you're like, wow, these ships are big. But the funnest, I don't know if that's a word, the coolest thing that we did was everybody participated, which I don't know if that was in the description, but we were all there would be like 3 or 4 people on one. I mean, the ropes were like this big. I know they call them a line, but the lines were like, there were like 3 or 4 of us pulling it in, and one person was getting it around the ratchet thing, the whatever they call that, the winch thing.
Wait a second. You're a sailor. You don't have these terms a little bit more in hand? You
It's been a
sailed,
while.
huh?
I haven't sailed in like 20 years. I should get back to that. I did enjoy it.
The
I
winch.
did.
Yeah.
But it was so much fun. I mean, everybody was doing something, and you could relax for a little bit. But usually, like I was like the person that was on one of the back lines. But then there were other people that their only job was to make sure the sail wasn't flapping around.
Right.
Right. So those people were just put on those sails, and of course, on the America's Cups they have several sails. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. But like, when would I have seen an America's Cup that said, "Hey, come on here for 2.5 hours in Boston Harbor"?
Never.
I mean, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's not. But this was, I believe, a retired America's Cup sailboat.
Yeah. Well, it's a nice excursion to offer the lines. I'm sure they offer it to all the cruise lines. But yeah,
It was incredible.
what a nice adventure. Yeah.
Yep, that was really fun. And then the other ones that they do are like these snorkeling trips, which are so cool because we brought our own snorkeling equipment, but I wouldn't have known if the person to my left was a single woman or a married woman.
Right.
I mean, we're all out there like, popping our heads up and, hey, look at this. And you just wouldn't even know. And then like, you're all on like a lot of those snorkeling trips. It's kind of cool. You go out on this nice big catamaran.
Yep.
Which is a blast because I'm not on a catamaran once a year even. I'm like, that's like the 4th time I've been on a catamaran.
Yeah.
So that's it, right?
Yep.
So it's a lot of fun. And when you're sitting there enjoying the views, when you're moving on the catamaran, nobody's like, even couples aren't coupled up because they're just all sitting there enjoying it.
Yep.
So I think you had a lot of good things to say.
And we didn't even explore the possibility of bring a single friend and go. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that either.
Nope. We didn't even talk about that.
Yeah, you can mix it and hit the singles life and the activity together, and do stuff together if you want to, and that's a great way to go as well.
Right, and especially, I forget if he said it or if I was just reading an article on cruising. Was he the one that said, depending on, it may have even been him talking to me personally when I've talked to him about this. When people are deciding to go, if the views don't matter from your bedroom because you're a get up and go person, you can save a lot of money by being on the inside.
Yeah.
And, to be honest, when I look back on it, I probably sat on the balcony 3 or 4 times, but it wasn't like for 6 hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of times I would see it in the morning, but it was while I was getting dressed and whatnot because we were docked. We were like somewhere, and I'm getting off. Like I'm getting off the ship anyway. So it's not like I'm going to not get off the ship and I'm going to sit on my balcony and read a book the whole time. That's just not what most people do.
Yeah, you're not going to hang in your stateroom. I mean,
Mhm.
it's nice to have, but yeah, I mean, you can give up the balcony. There's plenty of places to see the sea on the ship.
Right. Exactly.
Plenty
Yeah.
of lounge chairs and plenty of places to sit and enjoy the view.
Mhm. But it's interesting because I've known you since you were processing through your divorce and also dating. And I think you and I have a lot of the same philosophies. And what I love when I'm doing date coaching, what I love is I've said this before on the show, quite a while ago, but my whole philosophy is look, I'm going to be like your friend, but better because I'm going to help you be more discerning. And sometimes I say things that your friends don't have the guts to say about what you
Right.
are or aren't doing right in this whole dating process. I'm like your mom because I care about you. Most people's moms want their son or daughter to find a special person.
Yep.
But I'm going to be harder on you because I have the training and the experience to lead a single person through the process so that they can at least start to discern healthy dating, not healthy dating.
Right.
And
You end up liking somebody. Your friends are going to be afraid to go against him or
right,
or her, and your parents are probably going to go against her and not be with her or
right,
him
right.
going forward. They're biased. They're more concerned about their relationship. They're concerned about their relationship with you, so they're not going to give you the straight dope all the time.
Right.
Plus, God, your parents have been married for 40 years. What do they know about dating? And chances are your friends have been married or whatever, or maybe they're not successfully dating, may not have the greatest dating advice to give you.
Right. Well, and don't forget, sometimes, especially after a divorce, the main people don't understand this, but it's an unconscious motivator. The main motivator behind your couple friends is, oh my God, we feel uncomfortable around Bob or Jane.
Yeah.
This is so awkward. Not so much because we don't love Jane, but Jane doesn't, in our opinion, Jane would be so much happier if she were with someone. And it's more about getting through their own discomfort. They just feel it can feel awkward. I mean, it's bad enough for the single person, but sometimes couples feel kind of awkward. And that's why they often don't invite you over as often as you maybe used to see them.
Wow. Yeah, sure. Because with couples, whether it be your families or friends who have been together and still married, you have a divorce in that community, and everyone starts questioning each other. Or divorce becomes a reality, and it's just it's just kind of floating in the air in all these situations. So they want you coupled up, so they feel comfortable again.
Right, right. Which is really a shame. I remember way back in my 20s when I was single, I purposely didn't act like that. And I used to say, look, whether you're a couple or you break up and then you're two new couples with the two of you, I don't care. I mean, as long as there wasn't anything super offensive for me to not keep in touch with Bob or Jane,
Right.
I'm still going to keep in touch with them. And honestly, if I think that they're behaving like adults and they're not being vicious, I'm going to invite both of them to my party or my Thanksgiving dinner and let them know that, because there are people that, yourself included, there are people that can be amicable. It doesn't mean that they're spending all their holidays together, but they can be amicable.
Yeah, but there's a period of time you can be amicable, but there's a period of time where you don't want to sit down at the same table together.
Right.
You know.
Well, and we've talked about that, especially if you have kids.
Yeah.
That creates a lot of confusion in the kids' heads.
Well, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
Right.
it's one thing with just the family and the kids. It's another thing going to the in-laws for Thanksgiving dinner, the soon-to-be ex-in-laws for Thanksgiving dinner. And everyone can be open and accepting and amicable and everything, but there's a period of time when it's awkward.
Right. Well, and what we're also talking about here is, in this particular setting, we're talking about boundaries. Boundaries change and relationships change, and you can remain friends with your soon to be or already in-laws or your sister-in-law. A lot of
Yep.
times, we develop a relationship with our spouse's sister or brother.
Yep.
Or maybe someone that married into the family. That's okay, but that doesn't mean you have to be accepting party invitations with everybody,
Right.
or holiday invitations. You could still go see, the brother Peter who lived in Philadelphia that you really enjoyed. It just shouldn't be in your face, like at their family gatherings.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And where I've seen that become an issue, Lou, is when And it happened to me in a couple of situations with my first husband. What happens is you are friendly with the sister-in-law, and now you go through a divorce, and the sister-in-law is getting married, and she wants you there.
Yeah.
And your ex isn't at the point where he or she wants you there at their sibling's wedding.
Right.
I think it's really crass and inappropriate when the now single person says, "Hey, I've always been friends with Peter or Jane, and they were my sister-in-law for 25 years. I'm going." And it's really, it's a fine line of respect versus disrespect.
Right.
The bottom line is that's not your family. At the end of the day, you married into it, and you're close and you're friendly with some of those people, but you have to give some leeway to your spouse.
Yeah, everyone's going to be mature about it. And you say, "I appreciate the invitation. I would love to go. I'm going to leave it to your sister to enjoy the wedding with her family."
Right.
Yeah.
So for me, the hardest thing was I was very close with my in-laws, and my ex did not want me at big events, including their funerals. So that was a hard thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I didn't want to make him so angry or upset.
See, a funeral's kind of an exception.
Well, you would think.
Funny you picked out funerals, because there's not a lot of mingling at funerals, or it doesn't have to be a lot of mingling at funerals.
I wouldn't have stayed. I would have just gone. I would have looked like the Black Widow, sitting in the back in black. Yeah. In the back in black. Come in, leave. Yeah.
Just go show some respect, and then leave. You don't have to. Doesn't have to. It's not a big social event. Certainly doesn't have to be a big social event. I mean, I know we Italians, we have the mercy meal and everything. You're not going to the mercy meal or anything like that. But,
right. Mercy meal. What's that?
Mercy meal?
Yeah.
It's everyone goes to the wake and then the funeral, and then they go meet at a restaurant and have a meal.
Oh, and who's invited to that?
Anyone who would. Well, it's usually family.
Mm-hmm.
Family and close friends. I mean, it's not like it's open, not necessarily open to. The family gets together and plans the funeral, and then the principals will get together. We'll have the mercy meal at X restaurant afterwards, and meet you there. And it's usually a good sized gathering, but with Italians, that's basically family. But yeah,
right. It's good sized and it's family. I love it. But imagine if I were your ex-wife and there was this mercy meal after a funeral. It's like me inviting myself to everything, but you and I don't have a good relationship yet.
Yeah, no. And again, it's kind of a family outing too. So give the family some space and some room.
Right.
It's kind of a turning of the page. And with Italians, it's kind of a turning of the page after the turning of the page of grief afterwards. And of course, my Irish side just went to bars. So
right.
Kind of the same thing. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting to talk about this because, even if it's not a divorce and it's just a breakup, right? Or even if you dated someone and you haven't seen them for a few years, but you really loved their mom, it's like there's just this fine line of knowing you have to be respectful of where your relationship is with the person that you used to be with.
Yeah.
Not, well, too bad. I'm still friendly with their family. It's like, okay, why don't you be respectful and find out, just for example, if say Peter was my ex-boyfriend, I would find out from, his sister, who I really liked, is he going to be at the entire wake? What if I came first and I just saw you? But at the same time, I could pay respects to the sister on the phone or with coffee the next week.
You can be discreet at a funeral. I mean, the receiving line maybe, but again, it's not. You don't have to be interacting with everybody. There are some things that complicate this, though. Well, my wife and I were separated, not divorced, for a long period of time. We didn't divorce till about 10 plus years after we were separated.
Yeah, you were the unicorn there, but
yeah, but the kids were in, the kids were in school. In our instance, we had the kids out of district in school as well. We got them out of where we lived, and actually, she went to teach at a district to get them into that district. Plus, there was daycare and things like that that involved her parents and her sister, and oftentimes I'd be driving them there, and so we had a almost day-to-day relationship that way. Just kind of dropping them off, and often to be coffee with the ex-father-in-law or soon-to-be ex-father-in-law or sister-in-law, and just sit down and chat, and you can have that kind of relationship. But it wasn't like I was going to Christmas activities. down at the house and things like that. You still want to present a feeling of family for the kids. Hopefully that's not all that awkward and all that. There isn't a barbed wire fence between the different circles. Hopefully there's some there just for the stability of the kids.
Right. And whenever you can do that and have some sort of what we call camp civility, I call it. Whenever you can do that, whenever it's possible, that's always best. But we also know that there are some people that are just so difficult and have their own, let's just say it nicely, their own difficult personality. That they make it, you wouldn't even want to run into them at a restaurant or a bar, Yeah.
And the problem sometimes with divorces, especially when there are young kids involved, is that it's litigated through for a decade. Just first of all, the relationship is relitigated. Everyone's still touchy about what happened, what went on in a relationship, and that often manifests itself in custody battles and money changing hands and paying for things like that. It's just a constant battle for years. And God, it's got to be awful for the kids. Who wants that? I mean, if you have kids, the person you're divorcing, they're going to be part of your life for the next 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, there's, forever, probably. You might as well have it civil.
Right. So if it's possible, but, depending on the, ex significant other, that may not be possible.
Yeah, I remember my ex and I think we had the same thought. I know I had the thought, it's like, look, there's going to be weddings, there's going to be grandkids. I don't ever want my kids thinking or telling me you can't come over the house because mom's going to be there. It's just cutting into that time. Why deal with that? It doesn't have to be that way. And neither of us wanted that. And that was the first, other than the kids, that was the first priority, not setting up those types of tension situations.
Well, and the other thing too is depending on how nasty the breakup was and whatnot, the ability to create healthy boundaries immediately is important.
Yep.
Right. And so sometimes the boundaries keep you more in almost like a business relationship. We're only going to contact each other if it's something about timing at Christmas or whatever it is. And if that's the way it has to be, it's still ultimately better than having verbal altercations with somebody that your kids are going to see.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Kids don't walk around typically saying, how come you never call dad? Why don't you ever talk to dad? Or why aren't you at the Sunday barbecue? They know what a breakup is. I remember, my son just turned 30. And when he was 6, I went through my separation and then pending divorce afterward. And we had both moved to Lexington, and there was a lot of friction, especially because he moved to the same town as me. I'm like, dude, really? You could move to Bedford, Concord, Sudbury. Like, there's a lot of options around here. But he wanted to live in the same town. So we had so that he could have the closest proximity to my son.
Yeah.
But, even with that, there were times at the courthouse where we kind of had it out, but it was more in a sympathetic way. Yeah. So if one of us really wanted the other one to try to hear our side or something, we would be talking out in the hallway together. And the one that was trying to make their point would be like, yeah, but look, it was never yelling or anything like that. It was more, I would call it like sympathetic pleas or whatever.
Yeah.
But I quickly learned that the boundaries were necessary for him. He felt just too uncomfortable with me having too much contact with his family. And even though I struggled with it, I backed off because at the end of the day, I guess I just had the wherewithal to realize at the end of the day, they are his family and I can reconnect with them later on, maybe when things aren't so tumultuous.
Yeah.
And I have done that.
It's funny. I guess, I don't know. I don't understand that. My own personal perspective. Yeah. My ex was very close with my sister before she passed. And, she had a daughter and her daughter had a daughter that was close to my kids. And, she'd end up over there all the time and, bringing the kids back and forth. And I thought it was great that they had that relationship.
Right. And ultimately you should be doing that. But sometimes it's just not possible with a difficult ex.
Yeah.
Right. And
But the
Yeah.
thing is, here's the thing. When you're looking at a divorce, when you're approaching a divorce, you are going to have a struggle. You're going to have a battle.
Mhm.
This is going to be
Mhm.
a war. It's going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But you have the choice while you're doing this of having that war for the divorce
Mhm.
and then having that war for the rest of your life.
Right.
And I think you have to fight the battle in such a way that it doesn't, hopefully it doesn't leak into the rest of your life, because again, you have young kids, you're going to have to deal with your ex.
Mhm.
It's just the way it's going
Right.
to be for a long period of time. I mean,
Right.
if there are no kids or anything, go to town. If you want to have a war, have a war. It's no problem. But with the kids involved, you've got to determine what the rest of your life is going to be like. And like I said, my ex and I, we looked at it. We're going to have 20 odd years
Mhm.
dealing with this. We can do it. We can do it as friends and parenting partners. Which is basically what we were. We were really good at that. We weren't great as a couple, but we were great as parenting partners.
Mhm.
Just decided to put all of that first and uh, just give up the whole adversity for the rest of our lives. We didn't want that.
Mhm. Well, and the other thing I was going to say is, so my son was 6 when that went on. When we sat him down to tell him what was going on, he immediately knew what it meant.
Yeah.
He immediately said to us, "Wait a minute," because we were trying to dumb it down for a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
And he looked at us and he got really upset. And he was like, "Wait a minute, I know what you're talking about. That's separation." Because of course we didn't want to use the separation and divorce words.
Sure.
He's like, "Wait, living in separate, different houses, that's separation, and I don't want that." He knew exactly what it was, because even in kindergarten, he had seen other kids whose parents got a divorce.
Sure.
So the reality is, if a 6-year-old gets it, not that he was happy with it, it was harder for him to process because he understood it. The older the kids are, the more they're going to understand.
Yeah.
And the last thing that they want,
the more experience they're going to have with it, because they're going to
Right.
have friends who have divorced and separated parents. They're going to have friends that are, I'm with my dad this weekend, I won't be around this weekend to hang out, that type of thing. So they're
Right.
going to have more experience with it as they get older.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's funny. Yep. So it's one of my past clients wrote to me last night and said, and actually thanked me for walking her through this process of, because hers was tumultuous for quite some time. And so we stay in touch. I processed her out of her marriage about, it's probably coming up on 2 years now.
Mhm.
And that was a long divorce process. So it was like a long-term client. And she just wrote to me and said, "Hey, I just wanted to thank you, because I never thought I would get to this point where things are starting to fall into place. Because you and I have talked about this. It doesn't happen the day after you leave the court. You still have to pick up some pieces and you have to recreate your life and make it a good one,
Yep.
I mean, unless you're a cat and you have your 9 lives, you're not coming back 9 more times. So you got to get right this time.
Right.
As far as we know. And she was so happy about the fact that she said, it just occurred to me that I haven't thought about him in like 2 weeks. And it's been really great, even though one of her adult children has temporarily landed back at home.
Mhm.
I mean, she's got her kids are now like 26 to 38. And she said, one of my kids is back at home for a little while, but even then, like, she hardly brings up dad's name or stories about dad, because everybody's processed this. And
Yep.
there were these boundaries that I helped her create. And I did a lot of work with her kids, because 2 of them were pretty angry.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
So I did a lot of anger management coaching and anger processing, I'll call it, and giving them an outlet to a third party. And I, as you know, my whole business model is people have homework. So they don't just come and, feel sad for 45 minutes and cry on a couch. There's homework and there's proactive work that's being done. And it was just so rewarding to hear her say, "I'm finally not even thinking of this guy for several weeks." And he really was, when we've talked about this in past shows, we've talked about narcissism, and we've talked about the fact that that is an overused term, and it's a generalizing term. There are many people that are egotistical, but that doesn't mean that they're a narcissist.
Right.
I dated a guy once, the one that went on the cruises. I dated him for a couple of years, and he was always a perfectionist with like how his house was set up and how the kitchen was and how things were presented on the table and how he dressed. And I used to think, you know, like, what is going on with this guy? Because he cares so much about like looking really good and this and that. Right. And I finally figured out, though, it wasn't an ego thing and it wasn't a narcissism thing at all. I figured out by doing my research on narcissism, it wasn't that. His came from insecurity. Yeah. He grew up in extreme poverty. He often had to walk a couple of miles to the local church, the Catholic church, and ask the priest for help because they had no heat. And this is in Massachusetts, not far from where you and I live. I mean, this is not, this is not like Appalachia or anything. He's about my age. And I started to put the pieces together and I started to think, if I had been brought up like that, and to a certain degree, I was, when my parents went through their divorce, I was, all of a sudden I had to pay for my college completely on my own. Materialistic things count when you are suddenly without. You grow up, you go through this process of think for a while, and now I'm not as much, but things mean something because you didn't have the security or the things during that time. And so this woman really was married to a narcissist, clinically diagnosed as a narcissist, as is another past client of mine. People use that term very loosely. Yeah. And you and I know, we've talked about this. There are also 8 different types of narcissists.
Well, I had a similar experience to you did with an ex that I was considering a narcissist, but in retrospect, she wasn't.
Okay.
It was more of
Talk a little bit about that.
It was more of an insecurity type of situation, a self-image situation, a filling a need situation, and it wasn't your ex's story about having nothing as a child. It was more about, I think, the family situation. Mother wasn't particularly close with her, and father was a lot older and just didn't give a lot to it and died relatively young in her life. She was a real late baby for him. So just lack of that affection and attention in the family situation caused her to seek it, elsewhere. But in any event, I modified my quote unquote diagnosis on her. And I think people go to the narcissism thing very quickly because it externalizes everything, including fault. In other words, when the other person is a narcissist, you have no fault. There's nothing you could do. You were totally helpless. And the fact of the matter is, in most relationships, you play a role. Whether it's not recognizing a person's need or whatever it is, you play a role in a failed relationship. And with a narcissist, that's really a nice, tidy, that's wrapping that relationship in a bow, which is what a lot of people want to do. They want closure, and their closure is, well, they were a narcissist. There was nothing I could do. It was doomed to fail. And that wraps it up in a nice bow, and hopefully you can move on. But it's not always true. Right.
Well, and the other thing is, too, like being egotistical doesn't mean you're a narcissist. And we've talked about this, too. So, one of the characteristics
and trying to be the belle of the ball in this case with my ex, because
that's it. That's exactly where I was going. Yeah, you're such a good wingman. Oh my God.
Yeah, there's a thirst for attention and affection and connection.
But where's that coming from?
Yeah, it's coming from lack of it in their upbringing.
Right.
Yeah.
So I had unpacked narcissism before, and this was like a couple of years ago on here. And one of the things I did was I went through these like 8 definitions of different types of narcissists. So they don't always have these 8 characteristics. These are just 8 types of narcissists. And I don't know if you remember this, but one of the ones that I talked about, which was the second or third type of narcissist, was the golden child. So it's the opposite of what you and I would have thought.
Right.
With people that we've known, like the guy that like cared so much about, I thought he was so narcissistic because of the way he, took way too much attention to like how he dressed. He'd always say to me, "Does this look all right? Does this look all right?" I'm like, wow, like not to be sexist, but I've never had a guy do that.
Yeah.
And it was all the time. It wasn't once because we went to a wedding all the time.
It was part of his personality. Yeah.
Right. But, a lot of narcissists were the golden child.
It's funny. I avoid that.
You know what I mean?
My girlfriend and I battle about this all the time because she wants me to be stylish. And it's like a lot of times I'm saying a guy shouldn't look like he's trying too hard. You should
Yeah.
never, in fact, he should never look like he's trying. He can look good, but it's got to look like he wasn't trying to look good. Yeah.
Right. Right. Well, what happened to me was I ended up not trying to look as good anymore because it just didn't matter. It's almost like he just wanted to be the better looking one out at the restaurant. And I'm like, yeah. I'm not even going to ask you how you like my dress because like
it's not a competition. Shouldn't be a competition.
Right. But I think it's important to remember not to use this term lightly, that to be honest, it's even really hard for our own, therapists or a coach like me. I mean, I have a lot of training in this area, mostly through therapists that are friends of mine. It's really important not to throw that term around lightly. Right. It's honestly, it's got to be very few therapists will say to their client, yeah, your husband's a narcissist, because you can't really know until you really understand them, and you don't because they're not in your office, right?
Yep.
They're not your client. The other thing is narcissists are usually non-sympathetic. They lack empathy.
Right.
But the reality, Lou, is I don't know about you. I've known 1,000 people in my life who are not sympathetic.
Right.
They are not empathetic. They don't care about the fact that I'm crying or,
right.
That they don't like. I've even had relatives who I would say were non-empathetic, or when I couldn't get a job or when I lost a job, it's like, well, you'll find another one. I'm like, okay, that was kind of a stupid thing to say to somebody that just lost a job.
Right. Yeah.
So someone that lacks empathy is not automatically a narcissist.
All narcissists lack empathy.
Right?
All narcissists lack empathy, but all people who lack empathy are not narcissists.
Thank you, Lou.
Yeah.
Lou, I think we just wrote a book, and that was the title.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Because that's really it.
But at the same time, for me, it was kind of, looking back, it was a critical way for me to let go. It was a critical way for me to accept the end of the relationship.
Right.
So, and I was wrong about it, but it gave me cover to accept losing the relationship in a certain way. And I don't recommend people do it, of course, and just blame it on narcissism. Right. But by the same token, for me, it provided a little bit of relief and permission to let go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But what you're saying is, looking back, when you really analyzed it, she actually probably wasn't a true clinically diagnosed narcissist.
I no longer believe so. No.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. And so I started to think that too as I was dating this guy, the same thing.
Yeah.
But I think we have to wrap up in a minute. So this week we've been talking about being single and what it looks like to travel, talking about trying to be healthy when you're single and not hold on to grudges. Let's just summarize it in that way. And all of that falls into the umbrella of what you said, Lou, which is this overriding theme, which is you are ready to date when you don't need a date.
Right.
You are ready to be out with men and women who are also single and looking to at least maybe not get married, yourself included. I don't think you're like hoofing it back to the altar, but you want to do life with someone.
Yep.
Right? Whether you live with them or not, it's nice to do life with someone. And if that's where you're at, be wise, be discerning, and, using someone like me, who's a third party, that I know you like a sister and I love you like a mom, but I'm going to move you forward so that I can give you the advice you need, as opposed to saying, hey, just try this website, or, hey, say this to the guy or the woman, But
you can't be wise nor discerning when you're in a position of, I need the relationship.
Right.
You can't make good decisions. You can't be in a good position to choose a good partner at that point. And that's why people keep repeating the same cycles, dating the same person, always having failed relationships, because they don't do the clean out in between to be able to make a good decision about who they're dating going forward, because they're not discerning about who they date. They just need a relationship.
Right. Well, and, a lot of people make that mistake and they go back into it too quickly. And how can you do it differently if you really didn't take the time to heal and to see what it was? At the very most, like you said earlier, we all play a part in it. There's some part that we played in it, even if it's we enabled it. we allowed it to go on for 20 years.
Even
We said
just
yes to everything,
even
right?
just choosing that person and choosing that problem and choosing that relationship dynamic, you played a part in it because you made that choice.
Right. Nobody said
At a
goodbye,
base minimum, you have to explore why you made that choice for that person.
right. And the other thing too, Lou, is, a lot of times people don't see some horrible things that happen later on at some point in a marriage. So after the dating, but you made the choice to stay.
Yeah.
Right. And it does take courage, and it does take creativity, but people have to say, yeah, I didn't reach out for help. Yeah, I was embarrassed and I didn't tell my sister, terrible things were happening in my home, or Bill was coming home drunk every 2 nights.
Or even simpler, I failed to create boundaries. I failed to stand up for myself.
But people don't want to do that, but they have to admit those things. What was the part you played?
Yep.
Even if it's, I went along with these things, I didn't ask for help, I didn't tell my best friend about it. I mean, that's a crazy thing, Lou.
Even
Almost
if it's
everybody.
even if it's truly a narcissist and you quote unquote had no part to play, you chose
Right.
the narcissist. What made you choose the narcissist?
Right. You
Yeah.
have to look at that.
Yep.
Because they can be charming and they can be, just endearing people. And you have to look at that. Like, what was it about that drew you in?
Right.
And
what need did that fit for you?
right.
Because that's essentially what happened. It fit a need for you. And so you have to explore that and fit that need in a much healthier way.
Right. But also owning the fact that you stayed in it in an unhealthy way, even if it was because of the kids or whatever it was. You have to own that.
Yep.
Because there's pros and cons to that, staying in it for the kids. We all know that.
All right, time to go. Our normal time is Tuesdays at 11. Tuesdays at 10. Tuesday at 11. When do we do this?
Tuesdays at 11.
Tuesdays at 11. Normal time is Tuesdays 11. Check the library here on the page at Coach Judith.
Right.
And, find some great other episodes, some other things that we dealt with, and we'll see you next week.
That's right, everybody. Be well, be healthy, and come back next week and watch us Tuesday at 11.